Hey there! Welcome to another installment of The Bottom Line, a series where anybody can join in and learn to draw. Today, we're going to learn how to draw rocks. And to follow along, all you need is a pen, pencil, and a piece of paper. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So let's look at two simple approaches to drawing a rock by first breaking them down and looking at the structure. So the common ones that I look at when I'm drawing from the imagination are using the good old classic cube and the sphere. Now, let me go ahead and draw in a cube and a sphere and follow along, even if you've never drawn one of these before, and we'll get rolling. And then what we'll do is, after that, we'll go ahead and draw in the formation of the rock over it, and you'll see how this is a helpful tool. So if you're following along, either draw lightly with your pen or grab a pencil and follow after with the pen. So what I'll do is, if I'm doing a cube, I'll just start with the face nearest me. So it doesn't need to be perfect because this is going to be a rock. So I'll just draw a loose box shape. Could be a rectangle. And then I'll go ahead and shoot some diagonals off of these three corners over here. All that's left, you can tell, is the top line to close there and the side line to close the back end. Now we've got a cube that looks like it's sitting there in space. Let's go ahead and do our sphere first so we can finish off with the red pen. Over here, I'll go ahead and do my sphere, but I'm going to kind of truncate it at the bottom. You see, I'll kind of make it look like it's setting down like that. This will help make it look like it is sitting there in a natural space and not just sort of wobbling like a ball. So now, when searching for the formation on the structure, you want to keep a real loose process. What I'm typically thinking is that I want to sort of shave off corners, make it not look like such a man-made shape. And I'm going to show you the ways that I do that using now my black markers. So go ahead and use your pen or a Sharpie, or just draw with a thicker line if you're following along. And so let's go ahead and start kind of maybe cutting this corner, coming across. I'll trace that one, and then maybe I'll cut that one. See how already we have a surface on the top that's starting to feel more organic than that square shape would be. And then I'll pull down, and maybe I'll pull in a little at the bottom and come over like this. So now we see we have sort of this cube shape within there, but all the edges have been sort of angled out like the rock we're kind of going for. Now, to get that 3D look, we have our blueprint right there. We can see these three red lines intersecting. So what I'll do is, not exactly copying these lines, I'll go ahead and imitate them in the same sort of natural way that I did the edges. So let's say I'll come from right here, kind of intersect with it, pull down and come that way. And then we'll go ahead and pull that way with this line and end a little line there. You can follow with erasing the edges with the red. So if you have a pencil, you can kind of clear it out and start to get a clearer sense of how your rock will look. Either way, you can see that now we have a very convincing rock shape. Let's go ahead and look at the sphere over here and start to build out from there. So what I like to do is sort of, I'd call it like a smiley face, or more like the Nike swoosh, but with a little bit more angles and unpredictability to it. So let me show you. Kind of like that swoosh feel, right? So if it had been a clean swoosh, it'd be like that. But right there, I kind of distorted it. And so then I'll follow along the top, and I'll sort of just make funky little angles that sort of diverge from the clean, predictable sphere shape. So now we can see that we have the form of the two rocks. So let's go ahead and in the next step get into how to render them. Now let's talk a little bit about rendering. Now, rendering is when you take and put texture over an object, because otherwise everything's going to look really smooth and uniform in your illustration. And so, you know, when I'm doing a rock, I have a certain texture that I'll put over this form that we've just drawn. And so, let me go ahead and show you some of the common pen motions that I use when I'm texturing a rock. oftentimes I'm thinking of pock marks, I'm thinking of little cracks, scratches, and then also if you're having trouble thinking of abstract shapes, think of how countries look, right? Especially in the peninsula area where they meet the ocean, because right there you get so much unpredictability that is often mirrored in that texture that we see on the outside of a rock. So here we go. I'm going to start with some of the pock marks, so it's little circles. And notice how I do them sort of in no particular pattern or order or size, right? There's no perfection to that, just like you would see in a rock. So that's just completely using pock marks. Let's say we use pock marks and a little bit of scratches. So here we'll go with that same idea, but then here and there we'll sort of put a little crack, and then we'll come around and fill the spaces around it with that. And you can kind of even build out of a crack, right? You see that? And before you know it, you start getting a convincing texture. Now, lastly, if you're running out of ideas with the cracks and those pocks, you can use that really abstract sort of where the land meets the sea analogy. So, you know, funky shapes like this, right? Like that looks like the edge of some new country or something. And then I'll use a few of those, then I'll do the pock marks. And then you notice I'm kind of sometimes doing little dots. You can see how the combination of everything is what makes for a convincing texture. Run a crack off of that one. And so there we can see the progression into a more advanced texture. So let's say we want to take it over our forms now. What I do is I'll start with the base of the rock that's nearest me, so this one. So I can just sort of start riffing off it. And the whole idea is to not think too much about this, because I mean, who thinks about a rock when it's being made? Nobody. It just gets sort of made through time and a bunch of accidents and disasters and things like that. So if anything, you probably want to mess up a little bit now that I think about it. So there we go. I've kind of started to texture these faces that would be near me. Now the reason I did those first is because they're dead on. I'm looking straight at them. But these other edges, we want to kind of do them at an angle. So we want to skew that a little bit. So if we were doing circles, let's do ellipses, right? So here I go. And I like to kind of go in the angle of the rock too. So notice how I've changed my texturing to match the angle of the rock, therefore giving it a little bit more volume in the act. If I have a crack here, I can carry it through to the top, do little things like this, little dots, and honestly, less is more. I've probably gotten a lot of texture on these that, you know, doesn't necessarily need to be there, but you now see the point. And if the texture also ever starts overwhelming, you can always redefine the edges of the rocks, right? I can always come in and put these creases and cracks and really say, well, this is what's most important for the eye to look at. And that's where the eye will look. Put some little rocks on the ground down there. Okay, so in the last part of this lesson, let's go ahead and just draw a cluster of rocks together. All right, awesome job on that work earlier. So let's go ahead and take it and apply it. So often in nature, we don't just see one rock, right? There's gonna be a bunch of them. So let's go ahead and do a cluster of rocks to really just slam this home. And then from there, it's up to you to, you know, sort of rock on. All right, so I'm going in red, which for you would be pencil or drawing lightly with the pen. So let's start with, say, the rock closest to us. Let's make it sort of a sphere and not too perfect. Remember, I flatten out the bottom so that it feels like it's setting on the ground. Let's go ahead and do one of those cubes behind it. So let's say here's the front square, and we'll go ahead and put in angles just like before. So now we can clearly see we have that sphere, we have that cube. Let's go ahead and end it with one more sphere back here, just sort of boom, big old rock. And look at that, how putting the part where it hits the ground a little higher up than the one in the front, now we can see that these are all sitting in space. Clearly this one's in front of that one, and so on. So let's go ahead and jump into rendering it. Alright, now remember, the whole thing is you don't want to overthink it too much. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and with the edges. Remember, really, we just want to kind of start angling, cutting in and out of the edges and making, say, this sphere that I'm manipulating not look so much like a perfect sphere. Now we can see we have a top face and the side face of a rock. Let's go ahead and do this cube back here. Remember, we cut a corner, sort of come out. You could even come out there, see like that, cut another corner, coming down, cut in a little. Maybe there's a little rock at the bottom of it, so I'll do a little dent up. And then there we have the three lines converging again. And so let's go ahead and trace over them, but you know, just with that same looseness we did the rest of the rock. Perfect, perfect. All right, and lastly, let's go ahead and get this big mama rock back here. Boom, set it to the ground, boom, boom. Put some little rocks on the bottom. Now with that, I'm just doing some spheres and just kind of giving them minor details because they're just supporting the act, right? So all the big details go into the rocks we just finished. All right, so, let's go ahead and put the top on that big behemoth back there. There we go. So now, let's go ahead and render these up and then we'll have a finished project here. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and start putting our pock marks and our little circles and whatnot. Cracks, scratches, get creative. And remember, honestly, less is more. So I'm not going to overwhelm the piece with these type of little details. But if that does happen to you, remember that you can always go back and sort of thicken the outlines of the edges of the rock just to show the viewer that, hey, this is more important than all that little detail I have going on everywhere else. All right, so really right there is enough. You can really kind of keep taking that and developing it to, you know, the nth degree. Bonus round. So, if you want to stick around for this bonus round, check how I'm going to go ahead and shade this. Watch these edges that we've cut that are nearest us. I'm just going to go up and down my pen, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. You get the point. So hopefully you're following along, you're going up and down. Now this is really scary, right? Because we're just kind of filling in this whole rock. Let's go to the next one and do that same thing. Up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. There we go. And notice how there is zero carefulness being shown. I don't care if I'm exactly hitting the edges, if I'm going out a little bit. I'm being crazy as a rock that may roll. And so let's go ahead and now look at that. They all look like they have shadows on them. Lastly, you can put a little shadow on the ground. Look sideways lines. Those sideways lines do a huge job indicating that this is the ground next to the upwards lines. So with that, basically you can outline the edge as I'm doing now. And you know, I hope that you enjoyed this lesson and you tune in next time as we learn to draw something else that you never thought you'd know how to draw.